Alright guys, with the new core box coming out, I've decided to do the most basic bitch content I could possibly think of because apparently I'm on a roll and that's what everybody wants from me is more core box stuff. So, tier list time. Everybody loves tier lists, except I'm still me. I can't just do a tier list as to how good every model is. So instead, we're going to grade the sculpts and how excited I am to paint them. So here we go. All right. So to open things up, we're going to talk about Iron Man. And Iron Man is, I think, among the worst sculpts in the game. Or not in the game, in the core set. I actually think, maybe I should preface this. All right. Wow, we really thought this through. The core set, I think, absolutely has banger after banger after banger of sculpts. I really like all of them. I think only a handful of them are not that great. And man, actually, even the stuff I'm going to put in the bottom tier, I think is still pretty good. All right. Also, other rules. I'm going to try not to put more than 3 models in any given tier. So hopefully that'll put us in a more interesting tier list. All right, here we go. So Tony at the bottom. So the angles they showed on the stream make the model look not that good. I've seen some of the images and the videos that came out of Gen Con, and I think the mini does look pretty good, but I have kind of a bias against tactical explosions. I dislike them. I think they're not terribly fun to paint. That being said, these ones look better than most. And since we're there and we're talking about tactical explosions, I'm also going to put New Carol Danvers in the bottom tier. I don't like the tactical explosion. The sculpt, as far as like her body position and everything, is like pretty good. I think the cloth is believably flowing that she has. That's like her little tassel is believably flowing. I think she looks like she's flying. And as far as tactical explosions go, I think this is better than most. Actually, I think everyone in the core box is better than most. But AMG really can miss on female faces, and I don't think they've really crushed it here. So I think I'm going to put this one down in D tier. So since we're on Carol Danvers, binary form though, I think binary form solves almost all the problems of the other one. I like the tactical explosion a little bit more. It being kind of a rocket blast, I think it's going to make it easier to paint. It's got clearer hot spots. So like part of my annoyance of doing tactical explosions is like, where does the heat come from and how much of it is like smoke versus explosion, and like trying to paint something that's very clearly opaque as if it was translucent, I find very frustrating. And I really think that New Carol Danvers just like has everything that the first one does, except that the face looks good. So I'm going to put her up in S tier. All right. Where next? I think we're going to go with Zemo. I am not really wild about the Zemo sculpt. And so like I am totally ready to be wrong about this. But I also didn't like the sculpt from the original core box when I first saw them. Like my initial reaction was the first core box sculpt wasn't very good. And it was actually one of my favorite models in the box to paint. I just think it was painted a really good, or like it just took to like my already proclivity for like kind of cartoony paint jobs really well. I thought it was like one of the most fun miniatures to blackline, and you talk about like blacklining is one of like the least fun things to do in miniatures. I thought it took to it really well. I thought it was just really rewarding to sculpt. It had lots of different textures you could paint on it. This one though, I think it loses a lot of that stuff. He's kind of got jumpsuit and boots. He doesn't have like that fun fur or any of that stuff that I really liked about him. He is a little bit more dynamic, but I think you can do really static poses very well. And I think you're going to see when where I put some stuff that people are going to be surprised by, that I really like some of the really static poses here. Right. And while we're in that, let's go for what is probably going to be my most controversial take, is Crossbones. I'm going to put Crossbones in S tier. I am so stupidly excited about this model. Now, I think he's the bottom of S tier, but I think the sculpt looks really good. I really like the mask. The gun is really fun. The big muscles and the cut-off shirt. Big fan. Cracking the knuckles. Dude, the guy just looks sweet. All right. Where are we going from here? Red Skull. I know this. So this has gotten a lot of poo-poo-ness from the community. A lot of people are doing like the Gru voice when doing it, being like, do you want this? And I've seen some people that are talking about making it, like painting the cube like it's a present and like he's handing it off and putting a little bow on the top. I don't think this is that bad. I think his pose really emphasizes the cube. I think if you painted it with a nice glow, you could really shift the focal point. I think like the lines of the miniature really push it up towards the cube. That being said, I like the original Skull miniature a lot. I think it's iconic. I think this is like an attempt to make that more dynamic, but dynamic doesn't necessarily mean better. But I still really like this pose. I don't think that the core box, I don't know. I think it's a great core box model. Well, let's just do Cap since we're right here. I'll put Cap also in C tier. A lot of people are really down on this mini. I think it looks really good. It's a copy of a really, really iconic cover for Captain America. And while that cover is kind of a meme, I think it kind of corrects the insane physiology of that cover. And, it's just classic Captain America. And I think it's great. All right. More controversial pick times. I effing love Black Widow. I think Black Widow's the best sculpt in the box. I know I'm gonna Spider-Man boys don't at me, but I don't think this model has the same like AMG female face problem that some of the other stuff does. Tactical Enemy has not been overdone for me yet. I think this looks really great. I also love Ultron and her kneeing an Ultron drone in half. This is the best part of every dynamic pose, and when you think about like how Black Widow in the comic, or not even comic, in the MCU, is like always jumping on someone and hitting them, I think this is like a perfect encapsulation of her character. All right, let's move down. I'm pretty sure some people will be mad that he escaped the S tier, but nobody will be surprised that I find him in A. Is Bucky Operative. While I'm not the biggest fan of what the model does on the table, I think the guy looks pretty cool. He's got the knife. One of the things I really like about how they've changed his pose is that the metal arm is like really front and center. I did a lot of like non-metallic metal on my Bucky's arm, and I think a lot of it is just kind of lost because the fact that he has a metal arm is like very nonchalant in the original sculpt. I think he really captures the fact that he is like an equal to Captain America in this pose. And I really dig it. So from here, we're going to put, oh man, I really shouldn't have made a D tier, I guess. Because there aren't enough models to put 3 in every category. Anyway, Ultron and the Grunts. Ultron and the Grunts, I think maybe I shouldn't have put them in the same thing, but I think they're really connected. I think the thing that holds him out of S tier is the tactical explosion. I'm actually like fairly tempted to do the Immortal Hulk conversion on him, where like a lot of people were talking about doing like swapping the tops and the bottoms of those Hulks. And I think swapping the tops and the bottoms of the Ultrons probably doesn't work for both, but I think it would work for this one. I think the bottom of the original Ultron could look really good on this guy and get rid of my tactical explosion problem. I also have this idea of like maybe making like a bunch of Ultron bots that are like worshipping him and he's like kind of floating and they're hiding how he's glued to the base. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of the tactical explosion on this particular model, but I love Ultron. I spent 20 hours on my last Ultron. I expect to spend a similar amount of time sculpting non-metallic metal onto this guy. I really, really like it. So in B tier, Amazing Spider-Man. I'm a little bit concerned about this. So I've seen models of this guy that make him look like the best Spider-Man sculpt, and I've seen images of this guy that make him look terrible. So I'm not really sure where to put him. So I put him dead in the middle. I am totally ready to be completely wrong about this. The idea of him escaping the Venom symbiote, I think, is really cool. I think it's a total shame that the model doesn't have anything to do with that. That, like, there's the complete miss of, like, sculpt to model. Like, if this was the Spider-Man that is wrestling away the Venom symbiote, that's, like, pulling it off of him, I think that would be a better encapsulation of the character. But instead, there's just, like, Venom's just on the base, and that's great for Spider-Man. I don't know how this reads S.H.I.E.L.D. operative to anyone else, but that being said, I think he looks really dynamic and exciting. The picture that I've chosen for him here, I think, makes him look better than the Doc Ock Spider-Man twin box. I also think from other angles he looks kind of meh. So we'll see. I'm also just really surprised they haven't done the most iconic Spider-Man pose. Like, if you think about the Spider-Man intro from the 90s cartoon, the, like, crawling Spider-Man, like, why haven't we done that sculpt? We've had 3 Spider-Man sculpts, and we don't have his most iconic pose. That's just really surprising. All right, and lastly, I definitely think Doc Ock, man, I don't know, it's tough. I think Doc Ock's kind of dead middle of the box. I do really like this. I like the static pose. I like the jacket. I like how he's being held up by the tentacles. I just think, man, I love that he's doing a little bit of science with the tentacle, but I think they kind of went in too many directions with the sculpt. Like, if he was working at a lab bench and was having, like, the tentacles, like, help him with stuff, I think that'd be a cool static pose. Or if it was lifting him up in kind of an imposing manner. But it's like, it almost feels kind of like the sculpt is kind of different from the 3 tentacles that are facing downwards and the bottom half, and then, like, the top half and the one up tentacle. I think it's really kind of all over the place in that, but I also really like it. I think the trench coat makes it kind of try to lean towards the Alfred Molina version of the character, and then it puts the normal costume on to push it back towards the comics version of the character. And I just think it's kind of, like, torn and it doesn't quite know what it wants to be. And I think the sculpt is, again, like, I think every sculpt in this box is, like, fantastic. But I think that the Doc Ock sculpt struggled a little bit from being pulled in either direction. But you know what, guys? That's my grade, or that's my tier list on the different models. But I will put a link to this tier builder that I built in the description of this podcast or of this YouTube video. God, I don't even remember what platform I'm on. And fill yours out, and be sure to come over to our Discord, also linked in the description, and share your tier list for the sculpts of the models, or how excited you are to personally paint each one. We've got lots more Core Box content coming your way, so be sure to subscribe. But until then, I'm Vincent Curkov, and fun is a finite resource.